At exactly 4:32 a.m., northern Ukraine lit up like a second sunrise. 42 cruise missiles, 18 Lancet drones, $160 million of firepower tearing through the dark. The world called it Operation Winter Strike, but behind the headlines it wasn't a battle. It was a message, a thunderous reminder that the war was far from over. Civilians awoke to walls shaking, glass raining, and the sky screaming. 3 cities, Kharkiv, Chernihiv, and Sumy, vanished behind waves of smoke. For a moment, Ukraine fell silent. But that silence wasn't defeat, it was calculation. Because within the bunkers of Kiev, a new order whispered through encrypted lines. Initiate Operation SpiralGate. When the first missile struck, alarms cascaded across Ukraine's radar grid like a heartbeat gone wild. Patriot and Iris-T systems flared, clawing the night with counterfire. 36 interceptors streaked upward, 24 targets downed, 6 slipping through. And those 6 changed everything. Apartment blocks crumbled. A maternity hospital in Chernihiv vanished under a column of flame. 38 lives gone in 13 minutes, 19 of them newborns. Electric grids failed across 5 provinces. 400,000 people lost heat as temperatures dipped below freezing. Ambulances fought to reach streets buried in rubble. By dawn, satellite images showed 112 separate fires still burning. Russia called it retaliation. Kiev called it a lesson, a reminder that war wasn't about who had more missiles, it was about who learned faster. And in that frozen dawn, Ukraine began learning faster than anyone expected. Deep beneath Kiev, a meeting began that would reshape the conflict. President Volodymyr Zelensky sat with General Alexander Siersky, drone engineers, and analysts surrounded by flickering monitors of destruction. They spoke little, the images said enough. The goal was simple yet audacious. Strike the heart of Moscow itself. Not to level it, but to expose its illusion of invincibility. While Russia had spent $9.4 billion building a wall of radar, missiles, and surveillance, Ukraine planned to breach it with 2 aircraft worth less than $12 million. 2 MiG-29s, rebuilt in secret hangars, coated with radar-absorbent materials, fitted with infrared suppressors and digital stealth suites that cut detectability by 87%. They would carry R-77 and Kh-31 missiles, precision weapons for surgical destruction. A mechanic painted a white spiral on each fuselage, the symbol of motion and defiance. The pilots, call signs Phantom 1 and Phantom 2, saluted without a word. Engines whispered to life, and Operation SpiralGate was born. At 3:58 a.m. Moscow time, the 2 MiGs crossed the border under a veil of snow. They flew at 36 meters above frozen treetops, too low for radar, too fast for sleep. Below, the Russian countryside lay still. Above, 240 radar stations swept the sky and saw nothing. Each cockpit glowed a dim green. The pilots barely breathed, navigating by terrain-following radar. One mistake, and they'd be vaporized before breakfast. But at that altitude, silence is its own armor. Kiev's command tracked them via satellite, small dots moving through endless gray. The mission window was 70 minutes. Every second inside Russian airspace risked discovery, but retreat was not an option. Ukraine had been struck in darkness. It would answer in shadow. At 3:59 a.m., Phantom 1 released a tiny drone, the Leica 100 UAV. Price tag, $25,000. Its sole purpose, pretend to be a jet worth millions. Instantly, 2 Pantsir S-1 systems lit up on Russian scopes. They fired a $1.9 million salvo at a toy. The sky exploded with lightning and emptiness. The decoy had done its job. For nearly an hour, the vaunted air defense network would reload, blind and disoriented. Under that cover, Phantom II broke formation and ascended to strike altitude. In seconds, its radar locked onto a Krasuka 4 electronic warfare station, the same system that had jammed Ukrainian defenses days earlier. A Kh-31P anti-radiation missile roared free, slicing through the blizzard at Mach 3.5. Impact? Total. The explosion reached 1,200 degrees Celsius, turning snow to vapor and steel to dust. Across Bryansk province, 3 similar EW hubs went silent. Nearly 20% of Moscow's radar coverage vanished. Radio nets crackled with confusion. Operators shouted about phantom aircraft. 11 bogies where only 2 existed. A Tor M2 battery fired blindly, its missiles spiraling into empty air. Within minutes, the billion-dollar shield was chasing ghosts. By 4:05 a.m., the MiGs owned the sky. Russia's defense matrix, 240 radars, 2 Pantsers, 76,000 cameras, paralyzed by chaos. Ukraine's cost, so far? Under $200,000. Russia's losses, over 58 million. The jets climbed to 10,000 meters. Through thin clouds, the horizon glowed faint orange. Moscow. Kiev command transmitted the final line. Target corridor confirmed. Proceed to Phase 4. Inside the cockpits, the pilots exhaled for the first time in hours. Ahead lay the most defended capital on Earth, unaware that its night was about to end in fire. And beneath that radar blackout, something deadlier waited. Precision. 4:07 a.m. From high above the frozen capital, Phantom I and Phantom II sliced through cloud cover like ghosts. Below, 12 million people slept beneath the warm illusion of safety. Phantom I locked its target. A coded voice whispered through static, execute spiral pattern, weapons free. 3 R-77 missiles fell from the belly of the jet and dove toward Kutuzovsky Prospect, Moscow's glittering avenue of oligarchs and ministers. Mach 3.2. Impact in under 20 seconds. The blasts transformed glass towers into molten spears of light. Windows burst 3 miles away. Flames coiled upward like living things, devouring 40-story facades. On the streets, car alarms screamed into the dark as the western grid failed. 2 million residents plunged into blackness. Traffic lights blinked once, then nothing. Through that chaos, Phantom II descended from the east. At 4:11 a.m., it launched 5 Kh-31 missiles toward the Fili district, home to government archives and a power plant complex. One missile sheared the reserve parliament building. Another struck Kuntsevo power plant, igniting $110 million in fuel reserves. The shockwave rolled across the river, shattering glass along the embankment. Fireballs rose higher than the Kremlin spires. Within 20 minutes, emergency channels overflowed. 12 dead, 41 injured, over 2,000 calls. But those were only the first numbers. The real damage was structural. 9.4 million people cut off from communication. Air traffic control offline. The largest city in Europe had gone dark. At 4:22 a.m., Kiev broadcast a single sentence to the world. Moscow is no longer untouchable. By sunrise, Moscow was unrecognizable. 18 fires still raged. The air reeked of plastic, diesel, and fear. Metro lines stopped mid-tunnel. Commuters walked the tracks by flashlight. For 2 hours, the city slid back a century. Inside a bunker beneath Red Square, Vladimir Putin listened to reports. 18 dead, 103 wounded, over $1.2 billion in confirmed losses. Analysts whispered the true figure was closer to $2.8 billion. He said 2 words, "This is war," and signed a retaliatory order. But no command reached the bases. The lines were still dead. At 8:40 a.m., NATO convened in Brussels. No condemnation came, only concern. Meanwhile, the U.S. approved another $800 million in aid for Ukraine's long-range UAVs. Poland and the Baltics opened their skies, and hours later, Zelensky appeared on television from his underground command post. There are no safe skies for those who bomb hospitals. Moscow is no longer beyond reach. That statement rippled across the planet. By noon, Western analysts leaked a report. A $1,800 drone exposed a $500 billion defense doctrine. It was the headline that humiliated an empire. As the fires dimmed and the smoke curled over the skyline, one truth stood above the ashes. The era of brute force was over. In less than 24 hours, 2 aircraft, cheaper than a single S-400 battery, had dismantled a fortress nation's illusion of safety. $420 million in Ukrainian damage, answered by a strike costing under $4 million. The ratio stunned every defense analyst on Earth. They called it the cheapest strategic humiliation in modern history. Across Europe, generals and ministers whispered a new phrase: courage travels faster than sound. The battlefield was no longer about who had more tanks, but who had more imagination. Wars would now be fought in circuits, frequencies, and code. The Pentagon's internal memo summed it up bluntly. Steel walls and nuclear shields can't defend against imagination. Kiev mourned its dead under candlelight. Moscow counted its broken glass. And the world realized it had witnessed a turning point, not of armies, but of ideas. Because you can destroy buildings, you can silence cities, you can drown the truth in propaganda, but you can't bomb an idea whose time has come. From the blizzard over northern Ukraine to the embers above Moscow, the message was written in flame. Innovation beats intimidation. The war that began with missiles ended with a whisper. 2 jets against an empire. And that whisper will echo for generations. If you found this breakdown insightful and want to see more deep dive stories that reveal how modern warfare is truly evolving, like, share, and subscribe. Because next time, we're uncovering the battle that didn't just change a war, it changed the future.